Rygor Stonehoof the Earthshaker is a force of nature who will stun your entire team and trap you behind a wall of pain. With a totem on his back and a blink dagger on his waist, he'll dunk you like a cookie and eat up the leftovers, also like a cookie. Shake 'em, quake 'em, then take 'em to the history of Earthshaker. Earthshaker is a melee strength hero who utilizes his AoE disables to either gank or initiate onto an unsuspecting enemy. His first skill is Fissure, which causes him to slam the ground, creating a wall that stuns and damages enemies in a line. The wall will stay up for a moderate duration, where it acts as a barrier, and most non-flying units will be unable to pass through. Between its damage, stun, and utility, this spell is sure to give you an upper hand when used correctly. Whether that means you use it to cut off an enemy from their team, block the creeps in your lane, or just some good old-fashioned farming, Fissure is guaranteed to give you an advantage in all situations. Or it could give your enemies an escape path and grant you 4 reports of intentional ability abuse. Next up is Enchant Totem. This ability empowers Earthshaker's next auto attack, causing it to deal extra damage based on a percentage of his attack. On its own, the ability doesn't do much outside of maybe dealing extra harass onto an enemy or ensuring last hits and denies. However, with an Aghanim Scepter, this causes Enchant Totem to become a ground target ability, letting Rygor glide like a delicate whippoorwill and casting the spell at his destination. Its usefulness comes into play with the synergy it has with his third spell, Aftershock. This is a passive ability that triggers whenever Earthshaker casts any of his other spells. It damages and stuns in a short radius around him, which subsequently allows Enchant Totem and his ultimate to become part of his stunning arsenal. Speaking of which, Earthshaker's ultimate is Echo Slam. This is an instant cast point AoE ability that does a small amount of damage to each unit hit. For every unit, an Echo Wave will travel to damage all enemy units in a radius, while Hero and Hero Illusions will send out 2 waves each. In short, this spell does more damage the more units are around, and it's meant to be used in a large cluster of enemies. This ultimate makes Earthshaker one of the deadliest initiators in the game, and a hard counter to heroes who create illusions or creeps. As such, the best way to counter Earthshaker is to not stand near your friends, and the best way to do that is to not have any friends. Get rid of all of them. They are only getting in the way of you getting better at Dota 2. Earthshaker shifted his first plate on March 1st, 2005 in version 6.00. He uses the Tauren model, slinging a massive totem over his shoulder like the main character of a mid-2000s anime. In his first write-up, Rygor joined the Sentinel to defend the World Tree. And that's it. I mean, he also hits pretty hard with his totem, but there's not a lot of character development to be had there. In version 6.39, an updated version of Rygor's hero description was written by Tiki Boy, which tells the legends of the Tauren sages, whose consciousness melded with the earth beneath them. They could summon massive ruptures at their whim, and their power was so tremendous that their magic leaked out of the earth violently with every spell. Although the sages faded from the land, once the World Tree was threatened, a young Rygor stepped up to add on to the legends of the shamans before him. Very well written actually. A+ Tiki Boy. Earthshaker's voice is exactly what you would expect from a talking minotaur. He's gruff, aggressive, and suspiciously sounds like an angry peon.
Bring it on! Start running! May my ancestors watch over me! Death to the enemy!
Now, Rygor is in a very rare club of heroes, as all of his skills have remained the same since his inception. Sure, he's gotten a new tool in his current Aghanim Scepter upgrade, but outside of fairly minor tweaks to the coding of his spells, the Earthshaker has stayed true to his roots. That said, here are how his original spells functioned. Fissure would create its wall over the course of 2 seconds rather than instantly. It's more realistic when you think about what's going on, but it does make the spell easier to avoid since it travels at such a snail's pace and it has a huge visual effect on top of it. The wall would also curve around buildings instead of being directly on top of them. This could be either good or bad depending on who you ask, but it's not significant enough to warrant a deeper analysis. It also caused enemy units hit to instantly face Earthshaker, so for someone running away, this might slow them down enough to do them in. Finally, the original Fissure could destroy trees. Whether you're trying to catch a runaway enemy, or just cutting down a clear pathway for roaming, this provided a very useful, yet often overlooked utility. Enchant Totem and Aftershock were identical outside of their numbers, with Enchant Totem only providing a 200% damage boost on a 15-second cooldown at level 4. But it's okay, it'll be useful in the future. Echo Slam used to deal universal damage, which means it would pierce spell immunity, and it utilized a now mostly defunct mechanic. In addition to heroes and creeps, the skill would count corpses with its damage calculation. corpses were left behind by units that recently died. So in some very situational cases, if a fight occurred where a creep wave recently clashed, you could get a lot more value out of Echo Slam by ulting right on top of the dead creep bodies. A little more insight into Raigor's original kit was explained by Nakus, the lead developer of Dota in between Ginsu and Icefrog, who incidentally created Earthshaker. In his Reddit AMA, he explained that each hero was designed with the idea that it could compete in a pub situation and be scary on its own. This is why ES has an ability that scales with his physical damage, despite clearly being a caster. He goes on to say that nowadays, this design philosophy would be antiquated, due to the game evolving to have defined roles, and kits were changed around so that team composition mattered. Either way, Earthshaker got to keep Enchant Totem, even if it doesn't quite fit his role. Earthshaker's first major change occurred in 6.06, where Fissure's extension speed was increased, taking only 0.5 seconds to fully form, down from the original 2 seconds. Naturally, this made the spell easier to land, and was an all-around good buff. In 6.16b, Fissure was recoded, and a lot of its original flavor was adjusted in favor of practicality. The wall is now created instantly instead of over time, and it no longer curves around buildings. It also lost its visual effect, and it doesn't destroy trees anymore. Overall, the spell became more sterile, but it offered a lot more consistency at the cost of its visual flair. As a gameplay function, this is a definite buff, since the spell is a lot easier to control, and enemy heroes won't have the privilege of being able to react to the incoming wall. In 6.20, Fissure's damage was rescaled and its stun duration was reduced, resulting in a net nerf at level 4. However, Enchant Totem would have a considerable buff, as its cooldown went from 15 seconds to 7, although the duration was reduced by 1 second. With this, Earthshaker could have an Enchant Totem queued up as he snuck up on a hero, and then use it again after giving the bad guy a whack. In 6.49, Fissure would no longer force an enemy unit to instantly face Earthshaker, and it would no longer affect Ancient Creeps or Roshan. Now, I can confirm that this is the case by playing an old map, but there aren't any changelogs that indicate when this was reverted in Dota 2, since you can totally stun Rosh and Ancient Creeps now. So hey, if you know when ES could stun those guys again, let everyone know in the comments. If you figure it out, I'll let you pet Dazzle. Earthshaker has a burly counterpart in Heroes of Newerth named Behemoth, who appeared as part of their first batch of heroes in April 2009. Behemoth is a generic beast who uses a tree trunk instead of a totem and wears the face of Brock Lesnar rather than a normal human being. The lore of this towering titan doesn't really follow a story, as it just kind of describes his race as a whole. Earthshakers, wink, and wall breakers, behemoths march across the battlefield wielding uprooted trees with deadly force. The sheer force of their attacks bring enemies to their knees, where powerful blows make short work of them. Of all the beasts, none are so mighty as these noble creatures, nor any so willing to stand between the demons and their friends. Since the hero is just a generic creature, Behemoth doesn't have actual voice responses, as much as he has erotic grunts. Not only are Behemoth's skills a 1-to-1 copy of Earthshaker's, his first spell even shares the same name, and the skill descriptions are incredibly similar. Poor show, Newerth. You had a lot of time to change it up. So, we've got Fissure, Enrage, Heavyweight, and Shockwave. Like ES, the only real changes are based on the numbers, with Enrage only having a 4-second cooldown at max level, which is okay considering how hyperactive Han is. For a hero so focused around huge shattering ultimates, Behemoth is a real letdown. When you think about how the game altered Dota ports like Legionnaire or Slither, it's pretty weird that Behemoth never got any love over the course of the game's life. Outside of Behemoth, a few characters from other games deserve an honorable mention. Taliyah of League of Legends has an ultimate called Weaver's Wall, which creates a giant barrier much like Fissure. Its use is a whole lot different since it doesn't damage or stun, however, it does have a giant range, and Taliyah can ride along the wall to transport her into the lane to rock her opponents to death. Alistair from League and ETC from Heroes of the Storm also bear a physical resemblance to Earthshaker in all his forms. Alistair's what would happen if Raigor went on the juice and did curls for the girls and made swole the goal. ETC, on the other hand, is a Tauren, so his connection to Earthshaker's original design is due to them sharing the same race, except this one had somewhat of a midlife crisis and sings about how there's a hole in his pocket where his money should go. Although these characters don't have any of the abilities that Earthshaker established, they're all tanky bulls who love to initiate a fight. Earthshaker rattled and rolled into Dota 2, along with 40 other heroes in the game's inception during TI1 in August 2011. Instead of a Minotaur, Earthshaker here is a bipedal mix between a dog and a gorilla, culminating into a Bigfoot-like creature. Looking at the concept art, it seems like the idea was to always have him slouching, with tufts of fur over his body, a tied-up beard, and for the totem to hang out on his back. The only major difference was his face, which appears to either have tribal war paint or possibly a mask. In hindsight, it looks like they changed the overall concept to the beast we have now due to the thematic similarities to Juggernaut and Witch Doctor. Nevertheless, his original skill icons had much more focus on the totem, making it the focal point of his skills. It looks like his first model change occurred in February 2011, and here, his face would be revealed, and he adorned a much more savage expression despite looking like a sloth. Unfortunately, his big goofy nose took away a lot of his intimidation factor. On June 14th, 2012, his textures were slightly altered, looking more annoyed than pissed off, and losing his teeth in the process. On July 18th, 2013, Earthshaker's model was updated once again, where he would have more details on his fur, totem, and face, and the subtle addition of having blue eyes makes him so much cuddlier. His lore tells the story of how Earthshaker came to be. He was originally a spirit of the earth, much like a golem or gargoyle, except he created himself through an act of will, and he serves no master. He was first buried deep within the earth until he grew curious of the life above him. After a series of earthquakes, Rygor emerged from the dust and formed himself after a mortal beast. After all is said and done, he'll return to his home, and the earth will greet him as a prodigal son. He's voiced by John Patrick Lowry, also known as the announcer for the international tournaments, who says "Versus" all the time. He performs Rygor's lines with a deep bass, signaling to all of us that a powerful force lies dormant underneath a calm exterior.
Let's shake things up. Let's roll. The time has come. Slammin'!
Of his equipable items, a few set pieces add onto Earthshaker's lore. First off is the Forest Hermit set, where all of the items mention Rygor's desire for peace and quiet in order to gather his thoughts. The stone-forged horns are described as a more aggressive form that would help him face the challenges that were to come, but it's a clear throwback to his Dota All-Stars model, including the broken horn of the Tauren model and everything. The Tine of the Behemoth set could possibly be a reference to his Newerth counterpart, Behemoth, and it has the various tusks and primal armor that the Vanguard of the Beast Horde wears. He has a pair of Immortals in Gravelmaw and the Bracers of the Cavern Luminar, both of which describe equipment that Rygor has taken from his surroundings. Gravelmaw is taken from a pillar from a forgotten city built by stone giants, and the Bracers are from deep underground, inspired by creatures who leave behind celestial light where they crawl. With the release of the Planetfall Arcana, by reaching level 365 in the TI9 Battle Pass, Earthshaker now has a thematic connection to the cosmos. Sir Actionslacks has done a really good job covering this, and all the lore implications that come with it, so I highly suggest you check out his Loregasm video. But in short, the Planetfall item itself gives Earthshaker's memories of a distant land, and a connection to an unknown sister planet that was destroyed by some mysterious force. The Judgment of the Fallen complements this item, as it's a fragment of that planet that he can use to dish out justice to those who were responsible for its downfall. Sitting to the side on his phone like a third wheel chaperoning a date is the Eclipse Monolith, which draws its powers from the rays of the sun and the moon, imbuing it with the energy to counter the creeping corruption of dire forces. All in all, these items add on an extra layer of outer space backstory to Rygor, with the possible existence of other Shakers out in the universe. Neptune Shaker confirmed! Earthshaker also appears in Artifact as a blue hero, equipped with Fissure as his ability, which stuns nearby enemies for 1 round. He also has a signature card in Echo Slam, which deals damage to each enemy equal to the number of enemies in the lane. This is the only appearance of the Totem Warrior, so there isn't much to go on, but his flavor text more than makes up for this. It's a first-person telling of ES dealing with his existence. Having no parents or masters, Rygor walked the earth alone and confused. That is, until he met Kana. She offered him direction, understanding, and companionship. And most importantly, she was the one who gave him the name Earthshaker. I mean, this is all assuming that Artifact is still canon. There's a good chance it's going to be erased from all existence. Maybe Underlords will be the next beacon of lore. Woo. Aside from being a solid pick on the competitive level, Earthshaker has a couple of unique associations with the grandest stage of them all, TI. On the Observer level, when picked, Earthshaker's AR model beats on his totem in a steady rhythm, which audiences have made a tradition to happily clap along with.
Spirit for teamfight, and I don't know how.
On to more important matters, in August 2015, TI5 had one of the most iconic moments in the game's history, aptly named the
$6 million Echo Slam.
During the grand finals between EG and CDEC, Game 4 had a pivotal play that shifted the momentum to ensure EG's victory. After picking off Sumail's Storm Spirit, CDEC headed to Roshan to take advantage of their kill. Without any vision, EG instinctively moved toward the pit. PPD sent out a Hail Mary Ice Blast, and Universe followed suit. All of these ingredients put together provided the recipe for an unforgettable moment in Dota history.
They're all together. PPD, here comes the Ice Blast, ready for the dive! In from Universe! It's a disaster! CDEC! They're gonna get wiped from the face of the earth apart from aggressive!
With this advantage swing, EG was able to capitalize and became the champions of TI5. And to celebrate this quality moment, what better way than to buy the highest quality of memorabilia, an Earthshaker Funko Pop. Go ahead, pick it up. From his time in Dota 2, Earthshaker has picked up a few fun tools, though his core gameplay has remained consistent. The first notable change affected Echo Slam, where in 6.63, corpses would only count for half damage in the calculation, and in 6.66, corpses were taken out of the calculation altogether. Despite this, the spell was overall buffed in this patch, as the echo damage was increased, as well as the search radius. He also received his first Aghanim Scepter upgrade here, causing Echo Slam to release 2 echoes for each hero in the search radius. In 6.78, Echo Slam now considers illusions as heroes. Phantom Lancer be damned. This made Earthshaker much scarier against illusion-based heroes, elevating to the status of hard counter for these picks. In 6.79, Enchant Totem's attack damage bonus was increased to 400% at max level, enabling the scrubby cheese tactic of one-shotting squishy heroes by sneaking up on them with Shadow Blade even more accessible. Fissure also had its range slightly increased, but that's not as fun, so moving on. In 6.81, creeps no longer path around Fissure, and instead, they politely wait for it to disappear. The biggest benefit of this is blocking creeps in the laning phase, delaying their arrival by 8 seconds, which is more than enough to shift the equilibrium to your advantage. Echo Slam also no longer ignored invisible units or those in the fog of war, and honestly, it was about damn time they made that change. Just because you're hiding doesn't mean you can avoid an earthquake. Trust me on that. In 6.82, Fissure no longer has unit targeting, a substantial nerf which adds a lot more skill to mastering ES. Because of this though, the spell is no longer blocked by Lincoln Sphere. On top of this, Echo Slam's damage was changed from universal to magical, and all this means is that it no longer pierces spell immunity, giving the BKB wielders a line of defense against the dunk. In 6.87, his Aghanim Scepter upgrade was reworked. It now enables the jumping portion of Enchant Totem, giving him one of the best mobility options in the game. In 7.00, Earthshaker's talents had 2 notable paths. You could go for the traditional spellcaster route by picking up the talents on the left, or a more attack damage based one on the opposite side. No matter what kind of ES you play, these talents made sure everyone ended up happy. In 7.07, Echo Slam no longer dealt its initial damage, but enemy heroes hit now release 2 echoes to each unit instead of 1. The echo damage was increased as well, so overall, this would be a better team fighting tool. But if you're going for a single target pickoff, it's going to be a lot harder to accomplish. The update to his talents also gave him more utility, allowing him to do his job better, with the level 20 talents standing out the most. Longer range to block off your enemies? More echo damage to devastate a team? Yes please. In 7.17, the Echo Slam initial damage came back, although it's fairly minimal at 100 damage at all levels. The last major change occurred in 7.18, where the Aghanim Scepter jump range was increased slightly, and Echo Slam's waves could no longer be disjointed. This gives you a pretty good idea of what it's like to live in California. No matter how hard you try, the earthquakes will find you. Earthshaker's impact on Dota can be felt throughout its timeline. Between the powerful ganks, initiation, and disruption he provides, it's no surprise that he's made such an impression on all of our hearts. When all is said and done, it's true what they say. There are many Earths, but only one Earthshaker. I'm Dennis LaTale, and that was the history of Earthshaker. Last time I asked, what would you do if you had the ability to Chronosphere? Angel Loader and Scarlet Shiro had the right idea of trying to get rid of those pesky Joestars. Gazora would trick everyone around them to control the rate of lobsters dying, which is the right amount of joke crossovers that I like to hear. Shook Shark said, "Sleep! You and me both." These are great, because the rest of you are deviants and shouldn't be allowed to control time if given the chance. That's all for this one. Follow the Twitter, support the channel through Patreon, click on all the doodads, and try utilizing garbanzo beans the next time you make a salad. They're versatile, cheap, tasty, and a good source of protein. See you soon!